Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Veterinary Business Podcast, the show where we explore fresh perspectives, practical strategies, and inspiring stories from across the veterinary profession. I'm Dr. Amanda Landis-Hannah, and I'm delighted to be your host today. In this episode, we're diving into a topic that's central to patient care, yet often overlooked: breaking barriers to treatment with compounding. Compounded medications can be the key to overcoming challenges like drug shortages, unique dosing needs, or patient compliance issues. But beyond the clinical side, there's also communication and an operational component that allows the teams to be supported and clients to better understand how compounding supports more effective and flexible care for their patients. To help us explore this, we're joined by someone who brings both deep medical expertise and strategic leadership experience, Dr. Rae Hutchins, Chief Veterinary Officer at Wedgewood Pharmacy. Dr. Hutchins is a board-certified small animal internist, an accomplished veterinary leader with extensive experience in clinical medicine, multi-site operations, and organizational development. At Wedgewood, she leads clinical strategy and innovation, helping veterinary professionals deliver exceptional, sustainable patient care through access, efficiency, and personalized solutions. She has also held leadership roles with United Veterinary Care, VCA Animal Hospitals, and Pet Partners LLC, and she currently serves as adjunct faculty at North Carolina State University's College of Veterinary Medicine. Dr. Hutchins, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you here. I'm excited to dive into this conversation and hear your insights on how compounding can break barriers and expand treatment options for our patients. And before we get started, as a thank you for tuning in, we are offering complimentary veterinary practice marketing strategy meetings exclusively for our podcast audience. It's a short, personalized session designed to help you uncover growth opportunities and strengthen your business practices. So without further ado, Dr. Rae Hutchins, it is great to see you. So, Rae, I went through the official bio, but give me a little bit of the unofficial bio. Favorite color, how did you get into this? What is your favorite part about your role?
It's a great question because it's a little bit atypical. My role, first of all, to have a chief veterinary officer of a compounding pharmacy is a bit atypical. And then second, I spent a long time in practice before moving into operations. And so to go into pharmacy seems a little bit of an atypical direction. But for me, honestly, it was a long line of following a path that I care a lot about, which is I love solving complex problems. And if I can solve complex problems in the veterinary profession with the people of this profession who I just love spending time with, then I'm in a position that fills me with joy. And quite frankly, compounding pharmacy and compounding medications and helping veterinarians solve complex problems around delivering care to patients, it doesn't get more complex or complicated than that. So if you think about it from that perspective, it makes a lot of sense. And that's why I landed where I did.
Wonderful. Well, I'm sure that at least 99.5% of our audience is already pretty familiar with your organization. For the 0.5% that aren't familiar with Wedgewood Pharmacy, do you think you could give me like a one-sentence elevator pitch?
Absolutely. Wedgewood was founded several years ago and is most well known for being a compounding pharmacy. over the last several years, we've really grown into being a more comprehensive pharmacy solution for veterinary professionals, meaning that we have everything from our compounded preparations, which is what we're most known for, all the way to a technology platform that helps us deliver those medications and other commercial medications to veterinary professionals. That technology platform is known as Blue Rabbit. And so we really truthfully look to be the partner that delivers care in innovative and reliable, high quality ways.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, without further ado, I'm going to launch into the first question, which is near and dear to my heart. It's about the human animal bond. We often talk about how compounding improves medical outcomes, getting medicine to people in a way that they can give it to their patients. But it can also strengthen the human animal bond. How do customized formulations affect client satisfaction with the hospital as well as with their pet, treatment compliance, and does it have impact on client attrition?
It's a really big question, and there's a lot of different ways that we could talk through this. First and foremost, I think it's important to pause and put emphasis on what we as veterinary professionals hold dear, which is that we are there to enhance the human animal bond in many ways and to do no harm to the patients that we see. We have an oath that we guarantee that that's something that we think about in practice every day. A lot of times when we are looking at treatment recommendations, especially as an internist or as a practitioner that sees patients with complex medical problems, a lot of times what we are actually recommending is very challenging for that family to administer or for that caretaker to provide. It can sometimes cause stress or duress to their relationship, even though it's a critical piece of their medical treatment and a critical part of what needs to be done to keep that patient healthy and to keep that part of their family feeling good and feeling the way that they should at home. Mm-hmm. So when I think through how compounding can help with that, it's truthfully, it's identifying a way to facilitate or ease the challenge of getting necessary and important treatments into a patient. And I don't mean just for the patient. I mean, that's really important, but also just emotionally, it can be very challenging to family members to feel as though they're causing discomfort or causing pain when they're giving a medication. So if we can in any way make that more of an enjoyable experience, then that in and of itself, I think, helps protect that human-animal bond. Other things that I think of that often don't get talked about enough, I think are also things around the human-animal bond can be really stressed if the way that we have to deliver care conflicts with the caretaker or the family's schedule or their ability to actually accommodate giving that pain or giving those medications beyond just the actual act of physically giving it. And what I mean about in that way is that if it's challenging to pick up those medications, or if it's challenging to give medications a number of times in a day based on their work schedule or their family schedule, all of those things can cause challenges within that human-animal bond. And compounding has solutions for that as well. So it's everything from the actual physical administration of medications and how can we make that a more joyful, positive experience, all the way to the logistics of providing care and how can we make that more practical for families as they're thinking through how they provide excellent care to their patients.
I think those are amazing points. And as a practicing vet, so frequently I'll walk into an exam room and I can already see the worry starting. And so I do the backtrack on, okay, well, we need this medicine, but let's talk about our other options if we can't give it in the route that I'm talking about. So how does compounding really impact the veterinary team? Some clinics see compounding as a hassle to order or manage. How can practices start to streamline their compounding workflow? And are there any resources available from your compounding pharmacy to help make it easier for teams?
Those are great questions. When I think through that experience of when I used to walk into an exam room when I was in practice, you're exactly right. You almost have to size up what is the situation in front of me, know the situation. And when you do that, when you take a step back, there's usually underlying currents or reasons why a family or a caretaker may be afraid of a diagnosis. There's the obvious reasons of what are the implications for, this family member or this pet in my life with a diagnosis. But a lot of it also is the logistics. And we as veterinary professionals are the caretaker of that bond. We just talked about that, the human-animal bond. And sometimes I think that we lose sight of the importance of proactively identifying what are those key hurdles and how do we make this something that's easy, acceptable, more tolerable to digest for this family as they're learning information around what the diagnosis is and how to treat it. So there's a few things that I will say about how can we facilitate the process of incorporating compounded medications into our prescription flow. One is use this as an opportunity to showcase to your clients that you care about their experience and you see them and their pet as an individual. So whether that means taking the opportunity to say, what are the things that your pet really likes? What is your schedule like? What are things that are really hard and what are things that are easy? When you're providing that personal care, you're immediately building trust with that client. So when we talk about how do we make lives easier for veterinary professionals, when clients trust their veterinary teams, it tends to be easier for you to make recommendations and for them to be compliant with them. And compounding provides that exact diving board or that jumping, that place to jump off of to say, what is easy for you and what is hard for you? And look at how I'm going to identify how we can personalize your treatment plan to fit into what is easy for you and try to limit as much as we can for what's hard for you.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. You can use that as a platform to build trust, which means that you're automatically going to have that client poised and potentially more ready to absorb what you're asking for and run forward with it. The second thing that I will say is Wedgewood has a great customer service standpoint where we try very hard to answer any questions that you have in a way that can help you educate your clients on what to expect with a compounded medication. You can call our customer service line. We have information online on our website. And we also include pamphlets and the medications that you receive. And all of that is backed by our pharmacy expertise. And our pharmacists have veterinary specific training, but that's all because we want to be able to help clients understand what it's like to receive a compounded medication. If you are getting a compounded preparation, that might mean that the process will take longer. It might mean it comes in different packaging than what you might be used to. And the more that your team is prepared to set those expectations up front, the easier that process goes.
Right.
And is honestly something that, again, you can almost use it as something to help the client feel like you're giving them a special personalized experience because you are, candidly.
You are. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And everyone wants that personalized medicine. It's certainly things that we are hearing more in human medicine as well as in veterinary medicine. And I think that will be an ongoing topic of discussion, especially as we come into the new year.
Absolutely.
So I was listening to a pharmacologist yesterday in a continuing education lecture, and she was speaking extensively about understanding quality, having confidence in the quality of the products that are being made. Understanding, are the products being made from bulk, or are the products being made from the final deliverable, readily available product, but then being repurposed into another way. And we've certainly run into that with a lot of the transdermal gels. So with so many different compounding options available, what should I, as a veterinarian, be looking for to ensure that I'm working with a quality pharmacy, to ensure that I can trust the products that are getting sent to my clients? How do I look to know that I'm working with someone with the highest standards of safety and quality and reliability? Are there key things that I should be looking for?
Yes, and it's a great point. And it's a difficult point, honestly. I think one of the misunderstandings about veterinary compounding pharmacies are that there is an idea that there's a lack of regulation around compounding pharmacies. And while I understand where that comes from, it's actually quite the opposite. Compounding pharmacies are highly regulated, but it's a complex way in which they're regulated, which makes it a little bit more difficult to discern or understand if you are trying to identify that ideal compounding pharmacy to partner with. Interestingly, one of the analogies that I think of now that I'm really involved in this space of our profession is it's a lot like the spay incision. So, Amanda, I'm sure that you have had times in your career where your clients have assumed that if the spay incision is small and neat and pretty, that everything that happened around that spay was done in an excellent quality way.
Yes, and that everything on the inside was small and neat and pretty.
Exactly. When in reality, we know that that incision has very little to do with what we would think of as far as quality of the anesthesia that was provided or quality of the surgical procedure itself. Compounding is actually quite similar. And so when I speak with veterinary professionals about how do you find that compounding partner that is a true extension of the quality that you believe in, there's some pretty key things that you can hone in on. One is, do they welcome audits from regulatory bodies? So Wedgewood, for example, undergoes several audits at our various facilities from both the FDA and from state boards of pharmacy. So compounding pharmacies are regulated by the FDA and state boards of pharmacy, and any compounding pharmacy should have an open, welcoming relationship with those groups. Those audits make us better as a pharmacy. They help us deliver better care. What is being audited are very clear things that have been identified that lead to quality compounded medications. So that's one. Is there a clear relationship and a history of audits where those groups are welcomed in?
Are those things tracked somewhere that veterinarians can find? What I'm coming up right now is like when the health inspector comes through and gives a sign that the restaurant has to put up to say how they scored. Is there anything like that?
It's a really great question. So yeah, the answer is yes. And if you search within those regulatory bodies, you can find what those reports are. Also, a lot of the pharmacies will share the results with information that they receive. So if you have questions about what has been identified, or if you have any concerns, then that's something that you can actually ask and inquire about. The other thing that I will say is Wedgewood welcomes tours of our facilities. We, of course, do it in a way that fits within the requirements of our operations, but we welcome people coming in and pulling that curtain aside because we want you to see the work that we do. So absolutely, this is all information that can be identified by a veterinarian that's seeking to find that information. Other important indicators that I would recommend that a veterinary professional consider if they're trying to identify an ideal partner would be looking for whether or not there is a robust and established adverse event reporting system. So one of the things that we really, I think really prioritize when we think about our partners as veterinarians is that anything that we're prescribing or recommending, we want to know that that partner that manufactures it or dispenses it, that they stand behind the quality of that product. And in order to know if there are quality concerns, they need to have a robust, established adverse event reporting or quality event reporting system. And that's something that you can determine if it's present with a compounding pharmacy by, if you have a concern about a product, calling customer care and saying, I have a concern about a product. And there should be a robust way that they immediately can track the batch number, that they know exactly what that product performance has been. They should be able to see if there's been any other complaints or concerns. And they should also have an established reporting system to the FDA if an adverse event is outside of what they would expect for the product itself. And that's something that I really appreciate about Wedgewood. We have a very robust quality event and incident reporting system. The other indicator that I would point to is what relationships do they have within the veterinary profession? Do they have a veterinary presence? Do they require veterinary specific CE and veterinary specific training for their pharmacists? Veterinary training is not required in pharmacy school. So you want to make sure you're partnering with a compounding group that understands that there's a difference in human compounding than the species that we treat as veterinarians. And I don't know that that is always the case, but that's something that you can ask. What veterinary specific learnings and trainings do you require of your pharmacists? So those are a handful of things that I would recommend. It's also great to see what relationships and CEs and ways that a compounding pharmacy will interact with the profession itself. Wedgewood has a veterinary advisory committee, and 2 of the senior leaders at Wedgewood are veterinarians. So we're making sure that what is core and crucial to veterinary care is implemented in the decisions that we're making and how we're conducting our business as a partner to the profession.
When you mentioned that in pharmacy school, the students aren't required to learn about, we'll pick on cats. They aren't required to learn cat medicine. Does Wedgewood or other compounding pharmacies have sort of a crash course in these are things that are toxic in this particular species that are not toxic in other species, including humans? I don't know if it's like a black box warning for, with Tylenol and cats, something along those lines. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So there's a couple of key things that we are really proud of at Wedgewood. One is that we have veterinary specific trained pharmacists in key positions. One being in our, one oversees our quality team, and then another has a really key position in our customer care department where pharmacists are supporting calls that are coming in from veterinarians and helping with prescriptions that are coming through our customer care center. So those are just 2 examples. And on top of that, on top of having those specific pharmacists who have veterinary training, there's also a lot of wonderful events and CEs and organizations that pharmacists can be a part of so that they are getting exposure to these veterinary specific learnings. And so as a part of our CE program at Wedgewood, we encourage and require certain individuals to go to those trainings because we want to make sure that they're very up to date on that information. But that is not something that's consistent across the board in the pharmacy world, nor would I expect that in a lot of ways, because if you go to pharmacy school and you don't come out with the intention to treat veterinary species, then pharmacy school would not have that intention, but a lot of pharmacists are now involved in the prescribing practices for veterinary patients. And so as veterinarians, that's where I see our responsibility is, have we chosen a pharmacy partner that has that really robust background?
Awesome. And thank you for answering that question. One of the big things that I use compounding pharmacies for is different types of dosing. We all think about the transdermal gels and how we all wish every drug could be magically absorbed effectively through transdermal gels. But the reality is that is not the case. There's so many other alternative dosing forms that have become real game changers for compliance, and how that helps the humans in the household be able to then deliver the main ingredient, the main component into their pet. What research is out there and available to pharmacists to say, okay, we'll pick on, say, amoxicillin. What's out there that says amoxicillin will not work transdermally, but it will work in a capsule, tablet, liquid?
It's a really interesting question to answer, and one that has brought me a lot of joy being in this role, because we as veterinarians are scientists, right, at our core. And a lot of the way that I'm going to answer this is just really rooted in the science around the molecules of these medications that we're talking about. So when you're looking at compounded medications, you generally cannot know the efficacy of a compounded medication. And what I mean by that specifically is when a medication is approved to become a commercial medication, that process is something that's highly regulated and a part of FDA approval process. When you have a compounded medication, that same process is not followed. But that's not the intention of compounding. The intention of compounding is to say, is that active pharmaceutical ingredient, that key medication that I'm looking to deliver, is the compounded form that it has been placed into or prepared into, is that compounded form have a high likelihood to deliver the medication as I intend to give it as a prescriber? So that's point number one. Point number two is, will it be safely delivered in that dosage form? A lot of how that is determined is dictated by USP guidelines, which are things that are enforced by State Board of Pharmacy. These guidelines are enforced by State Board of Pharmacy and how compounding practices are built. And the USP was intended to make sure that compounded medications have a likelihood of being delivered in the way they are intended and that they are safe. So if I think through those principles, that's what our pharmacists, or that's what veterinary trained pharmacists, or pharmacists in general, should be thinking about any time that they are looking at a compounded preparation. Right. So getting back to transdermals, that's a hot topic. There's a lot of demand for transdermals because of the ease of them. However, not all medications are effective in a transdermal formulation. So to answer your question, what do we look at to determine if something can be in a certain dosage form? Well, one is, in order to pass through that skin barrier, molecule size really matters. So the pharmacists that are looking at, should this be in a transdermal prep, one of the inputs that they think of is the molecule size likely to go through the skin barrier because of what we know about that molecule size? So antibiotics generally are very large molecule size, and that is why you generally do not see antibiotics in a transdermal preparation. On the other side, if you think about safety, anything that you put into a transdermal formulation has a high likelihood to brush up against other pets or family members or be licked off, etc. And so we have to think about, is there high likelihood of toxicity or safety concerns, which is why it's very unusual to see chemotherapeutics in a transdermal solution. So those are the types of things that are thought about, and it's usually all related on therapeutic window of the medication, molecule size, and the key things we know to be true about the active ingredients, as well as how those active ingredients would interact with the excipients or inactive ingredients that are in any formulation.
It's definitely been a topic that the transdermals specifically that have such great potential, and I'm personally very excited that we now have a commercially available transdermal that is incredibly helpful instead of having all of those drugs needing to be compounded, having something that is FDA approved certainly has its own benefits because there's so many drugs and so many needs. There is more than enough to go around to all the different pharmacies and formulations. But let's talk specifically about maybe the product is already out there, but you have a patient that's allergic to a component or has a food allergy or a food intolerance and can't take the medication in the currently available form. Those patients can be really hard to medicate. And I mean, sometimes it's even the difference between a tablet chew and a soft chew. I mean, everybody's got their texture issues and their flavor issues. And of course, I love seeing the marshmallow flavor showing up when I'm ordering medication. So how does compounding open new opportunities for our patients to get the medicine that they need? And what do veterinarians need to know about tailoring those formulations in a safe way?
Wow. There's a lot to think through in that question. And where I'll start is, first and foremost, every veterinary professional should know that if a commercially available formulation is available, that is what you should prescribe. And that is because, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of incredible work that goes into bringing those commercially manufactured medications to market. And the work that goes in that is to prove safety and efficacy being key there. Those medications are looked at in a way that showcases that they are efficacious in the species, at the dose that you're giving, in the form that you're giving, and the disease state that you're treating. And that trumps everything. So if a commercially manufactured medication is available, first and foremost, that's what you should look to as a prescriber. That said, as veterinarians, we're MacGyvers. We have to get creative with a lot of our treatments. And when you look at disease processes that we manage and all of the species that we manage those disease processes in, it's pretty compelling that around 70% of the time in our sick patients, we are reaching for medications in some extra label way. And the moment that you reach for a medication in an extra label way, some of the efficacy and some of the safety information may not necessarily relate or convey to what you are trying to accomplish as a prescriber in that moment. So in that moment, when you are reaching for a medication in an extra label way, we have to, as prescribers, start to think through the risk and benefit of that decision. Is there risk in reaching for the medication in a way that hasn't been looked at all? Is there risk in prescribing that in a way that hasn't been looked at in those safety studies or in those efficacy studies? Is any of that risk mitigated by pulling an experienced compounding pharmacist into that conversation to help me achieve my end goal for this patient. So that's one thing I would encourage all prescribers to think through, is when they are in that moment of, I'm going to split this tablet, or I'm using this medication that was studied in dogs or humans in a cat, like anything like that. I'm crushing this tablet and putting it in tuna juice to make it easier to give. It's moments like that where you should think, is there a compounded opportunity or a compounded preparation that I could bring in? And the expertise of the compounding pharmacy that I work with, could they complement what I am thinking through for this patient to help me deliver care in the way I intend to in a safe way? So that's point one. Point two is, I think that compounding is so much more than just adding flavor. Compounding is everything from, we have these tablets called quad tabs that when we press down, we've been able to show in our analytical labs that when we press down, they break into the dose, into the exact amount that you're looking to deliver to that patient. So everything from specifics of exactly what dose you're trying to deliver to your patient, all the way to making that easier because it's chewable, or liquid or something along those lines, all the way to, if you know that you have a patient that is intolerant of an inactive ingredient or some ingredient, whether it's because they have that enormously obvious hypersalivation, like, oh, this is the most bitter medication I've ever seen, right? That is an intolerance to the medication. Or maybe they have an actual allergy. Maybe they have an actual, allergic response to a medication. Those are all reasons to think about compounding. And you brought up marshmallow, which I'm so glad you did. I personally hate marshmallows. Fun fact, hate marshmallows. I think they're disgusting. I'm one of those rare people that hate.
Don't come visit our house because my children require me to have them at all times.
So I don't like marshmallows at all. And we know that cats can't really discern that flavor, but we also know that the sweetness of the marshmallow flavor masks the bitterness of active ingredients like gabapentin, and that is why it is easier to administer that medication in a marshmallow flavor. And so that is an expertise of pharmacists saying, how do I mask something that is causing an overt reaction to a medication that results in that medication coming out in this frothy saliva that then gets all over the kitchen instead of into the patient? Those are some of the key ways that I would encourage prescribers to think confidently and proactively about when compounding is appropriate.
Awesome. One last bonus question. I understand that there is a difference between compounding from bulk product and compounding from finished product. Say, for instance, taking a drug that's commercially available and repurposing it into a different structure. But there's also different rules and regulations for both of those. But my understanding is some of that is state to state, or is that a national edict? And how do you best understand as the practicing veterinarian? Because the situation that I'm thinking of right now is, stocking, say, liquid metronidazole in a hospital, or, something else that's not commercially available, but you use so frequently that you need to have access to. Are there differences in capabilities to do that between bulk product versus commercially available product?
So the short answer is yes. The important thing to keep in mind is that a compounding pharmacy should work with FDA registered suppliers and providers. And that is something that should be a part of identifying a quality vendor and only working with a quality vendor or supplier that is FDA registered. So that's one important piece that I will say. The second
Okay.
is any compounding pharmacy that is distributing medications for office stock into a hospital should absolutely be following the state board of pharmacy requirements as well as federal guidelines, which are the guidelines for industry GFI 256. And a pharmacy should not distribute medications for office stock with if they are not following the requirements of the state and GFI 256. So circling all the way back to one of our initial questions is when you're looking for an ideal compounding pharmacy, you should ask, are you aware of the state requirements, state board of pharmacy requirements where I am practicing as a veterinarian, and are you compliant? And two is, are you compliant with the guidelines for industry from the FDA, GFI 256? Because if a pharmacy is compliant with both of those, the prescriber should not be able to receive medications that don't meet those requirements. And on top of that, you are then partnering with a pharmacy that is taking it very seriously to protect your license as a veterinarian to help
Right.
your partner to make sure that you have medications and are able to distribute them in a way that is compliant with your state board of pharmacy and GFI 256.
That's super helpful because as a relief doctor, some places I go have things and some places I go don't have things. And I think a piece of it is a lack of education around what you could have depending on your relationship with your compounding pharmacy and what would be effective to have on hand as opposed to impacting the human animal bond, as opposed to having to send a prescription, get it sent to the client in several days. It's always tough not initiating that treatment right away.
It is really, really hard. What I will say is that, again, this comes down to communicating expectations. Help that client feel comfortable about when they're going to get the medication and what that means within the condition that you're treating.
Yeah.
If you as a veterinarian understand that it's acceptable that it could be 2 or 3 days before they start the medication, and you share that and also share, because I want to make this a seamless experience for you. I'm having this delivered directly to your home. As soon as you get it, please start it. Immediately, you increase the comfort of that client because they have an expectation of when they're starting the medication and how they're receiving it. The other thing to keep in mind is you can share that compounding preparations are there for personalizing their experience. So if a disease process is critical, and the situation means that you need to start that medication in the office that day, search for a medication that may not be ideal for the long-term treatment, but is close enough to what you need that the client can give it for a period of time until that more personalized compounded medication is available. And that's something that I think prescribers are actually very good at navigating, but where we sometimes are not as good is explaining to clients, this may be really challenging to get this medication into your pet for a period of time. However, I'm going to go ahead and proactively order and prescribe an alternative form that I think will be easier, and that will be to you within 2 to 3 days. So hang in there. Help is on the way. And I think that just setting those expectations of how this condition will be treated, it just goes a really, really long way for clients and the challenges around when they think they should be getting their medications and starting them.
That's so true. The communication piece is always a big issue. Thank you so much, Dr. Rae Hutchins, for joining us today and sharing your insights on breaking barriers to treatment with compounding. It's been such an informative and inspiring conversation, and we truly appreciate the expertise and perspective you brought to this topic. To all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being part of our Veterinary Business Podcast community. We truly appreciate your continued support and engagement. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your colleagues and friends in the veterinary field. And don't forget to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps other veterinary professionals discover the show and join in our growing community. If you have topics that you'd like myself or one of our co-hosts to cover, please reach out to us on our LinkedIn or on our social medias. We're always looking for topics that interest our listeners so that we can get you the best information to help our listeners really stay up to date. So until next time, keep learning, keep leading, and keep making a difference for the pets and the people who depend on you. I wish everyone an amazing week ahead.